All right, thanks everyone so much for joining us this evening. My name is Kaylee Hawkins. I'm the Pacific Regional Director with Best Friends Animal Society, and I'm serving as tonight's moderator for our town hall. Let's Get Them Home Part 2. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to go ahead and go over a few housekeeping notes. So everyone who is joining as a new attendee is going to be automatically muted for the portion of the webinar, so you don't have to worry about unmuting yourself or showing up on to listen and learn. If you have any questions at any point, please use the Q&A box feature. Any questions that are submitted throughout the event are going to be visible on our end. We may pause a few times throughout the presentation to answer questions if they're relevant to what we're talking about, but we've also reserved some time at the very end of our panel to go over any questions that we can get to. Also, please make sure you keep an eye on the chat box for any resources. We'll be sharing resources there that'll link to either live web pages or some documents that will be relevant from the topic that we're speaking about. And please note that this webinar is recorded, so it'll also be available after the session if you get pulled away or want to share this with someone in your network. So I am really excited and honored to be joined by three other dynamic animal welfare leaders in our industry. So I'm going to introduce them and they can go ahead and turn on their cameras as I introduce them. First is Michele Anderson. She's the Public Affairs Coordinator for the El Paso Animal Services. Thanks for joining us, Michele. Julie Bank, who's the Director of Riverside County Animal Services. Hi, Julie. And Hannah Beaver, who's the Director at Lincoln County Animal Services in North Carolina. Thanks, Hannah. So for those of you who have been attending our town halls over the past year or so, we did a Let's Get Them Home webinar, town hall back in about the January time where we had 4 other dynamic leaders in the animal welfare scope talking about the return to home efforts and some of the innovation that's happening, some of the really cool ways that agencies are working to improve their return to home. And one of those panelists was Gina Knapp. She is a national manager level person at Michelson Found Animals Foundation. And Gina is a really good friend of mine, and I know Julie's worked with her really closely too in the state of California. And I remember when Gina was leaving her role at Front Street Animal Shelter, one of the things that she would tell people is, think lost, not stray. And I think that's just such a relevant kickoff to what the Return to Home Challenge has been, that's been funded by Maddie's Fund and Michelson Found Animals Foundation. And a lot of other national agencies have been joining in and saying that we support this effort. So all of the agencies that are represented on tonight's panel are participating in the No Place Like Home Challenge. And if you're not familiar with that, we'll share a link in the link section. It has 7 tenets or seven little key practices that are defined. And we're going to attempt to go over as many of them today and have you learn from the panelists of some cool ways that they've been innovating with those tenets. So we're going to start with Hannah. So Hannah, if you wanted to unmute yourself. This challenge has prompted a lot of really quick changes that an organization can take. And that second tenet of return to home policies and lost and found techniques are marketed to the community, right? So there's a lot of really easy little wins that you can take as an agency to embrace that. What are some of the shifts that your organization made as a smaller rural agency that is applicable to all agencies across the nation?
So keeping in mind that we are a small agency, we see about 3,000 animals a year, which to a lot of y'all doesn't seem like many. To our small community is still quite a bit. So for us, managing that and managing this challenge, we've really looked at what we can do as an agency from the more high tech to the more low tech and what will actually impact our agency and make a difference. So being a small local government, we have the luxury of being somewhat more connected to our IT department and to other departments within the county. So one of the first things that we decided that we really needed to do was take a look at our county website. So we really used our partners within the county to help us do that. So working to do that, we connect with our IT department and say, hey, look, we as a small department are not really that tech savvy. What could we do to beef up our lost and found on our website and really connect with the software that we use in order to make lost and found go better for our website and for the public when they come to our website? So really making sure that all the resources there are available. We should have basically a whole new interface for lost and found on our website within the next couple of weeks. It's our big thing. We have made some changes already, but we plan on making more. The other thing, obviously, is using Adopt-A-Mize. We've really enjoyed that so far. It has made a huge difference in our photos because being a small shelter, when you take that intake photo of that animal that's been found, our intake room is basically our everything room. So what's sometimes in the background of the everything room are things that you might not really want showing up in an intake photo, like a trash can or things like that. So really focusing on the animals, using Adopt-A-Mize to highlight those animals and being able to post that has made a huge difference. We even went down to basically the lowest tech version of everything. We feel like there are a lot of people in our community who don't necessarily know what to do when they lose an animal or they find an animal. So we have basically used a website to create magnets, because fridge magnets are kind of something that, I mean, I have a lot of. I don't necessarily think about it every day, but we really wanted to make sure that if people lost or found a pet, that they thought, wait a minute, I know what to do about that. So what we decided to do with the fridge magnets that we have produced, which basically has our phone number and is like lost a pet, found a pet, call us, is to actually distribute them to county employees, because being a smaller county, we feel like employees in other departments are sometimes the people that people contact most. You know, someone who works in local government, you call them and you say, hey, what do I do if I found this animal? They may not call us, but if at least the people who work for the county on the larger level understand what to do, we felt like that would be a great way to get the word out on how to report a lost pet or how to report a found pet. So we've gone from the higher tech for us to the lower tech, and honestly, we've really enjoyed the whole challenge so far.
That's great. And those are such easy things to implement, right? Like having something just to throw in your fridge is super easy. So I'm glad that you're able to make those changes. There's actually something really cool. I'm going to throw it in the chat while we move on to the next question. One of our other regional directors, Stacy Rogers, who oversees our Midwest and Great Plains, shared from Fort Wayne, Indiana. They did a really cute way to show individuals how to look for lost and found pets, as they did this unicorn was found roaming the streets, and made it super memorable, right? Because it's super easy to do something like, hey, this is what you do when you find an animal, blah, blah, blah. But if you do it in a memorable way, this unicorn, and then we took it and we did the find foster. Now I'm fostering it at home, right? It was really cute and memorable. I'll throw that in the chat for others to look at, but really easy ways for your community to remember what those tactics are, because it's really easy to forget them in the moment. So switching gears from a smaller agency to a huge agency, Riverside County, Julie. So Riverside County is massive, and it's an agency I'm super familiar with. We're neighbors. It's about 7,000 square miles, which is just mind-boggling to think about. And there's always a lot of animal-loving community members who want to help the department, but it's really hard when your brick and mortars are so spaced out and they're probably not geographically conducive to ways for them to help. But you've been able to find some really cool volunteer opportunities for those animal welfare lovers who also can help with your RTO. So can you talk a little bit about that program?
Sure. Not only are we 7,000 square miles, but we are also all different terrains. We're mountainous, we're rural, we're city, we have everything but a beach. And in each of those communities, they're different. And each of those communities, we have identified that, first of all, we can't always get to them in the timely manner that we want to get to them because of the distance. And the second thing is that there are people within the communities already who are identified as the animal welfare people. Some of them are our friends, some of them aren't our friends, but our goal is to make them our friends. So we created a new program called the Community Ambassador Program. And that was all about engaging the community in lost and found, and engaging the community in animal services info. So first step was to identify them and to figure out who those people were. Who are those people who are already finding animals? Who are those people that the community is already turning to? Who are those people that are already posting all over social media when a lost animal is found? And some of them we identified were already our volunteers. Others weren't volunteers at all. But we tried to bring them in to our fold. We gave them a training and a scanner. It was really as simple as that. Now the scanner was obviously not cheap, but we did get grant funding to give them a scanner. But the whole purpose is that we support them and give them tools to be identified as the person to go to, rather than having to call the animal shelter. So they're the person that when someone finds an animal, they call in the middle of the night because they're most likely willing to get up when our officers are not responding. And they can get that animal scanned, hopefully stay on the phone for longer than we're able to stay on the phone to find the information and return that animal back home and work with the community. They are also the folks who are trolling our websites already. So we're engaging them to continue to do that and to find the animals on our website that are from specific areas or from specific cities, and then post like crazy on their social media pages so that they can then network them and get them back home. And that's been remarkably successful. We're like others, we're working on updating our website. We've created a online section through Chameleon that people can post that they found an animal so people can go on and look for the animals. They are also utilizing social media like crazy. So this ambassador program, instead of having them be people that we, at one point, to be honest, we're slightly annoyed at because it's like, wait, you're not following the rules. We're now embracing it and engaging it. We're also even looking at ordinance changes so that they can actually be legally allowed to do it with process so that it's clear and people who are looking for their lost pet can get back home. It's been, again, the first step is to find the people. The other day I was at a city council meeting and I learned that one of the wives of the city council member that I was talking to is one of these people just by coming to a city council meeting and talking about this effort. He's like, I think that's my wife. She needs to become a volunteer. So of course we immediately jumped to make her a volunteer. We've provided the training, we've provided the resources, and it's also helped us identify the challenges in each of the areas since they're so different. So like just the other day, one of our community ambassadors is like, we have a community cat problem and I need help. So we were able to help them. Another community ambassador found an animal, returned an animal back home and ended up being on the front page of the local newspaper, highlighting the particular program. So it's really exploded into who knows what it could be. And it was really nice to be able to engage the community in a way that we hadn't engaged them before and on a positive way. We're always looking for more community ambassadors. I think our biggest issue right now is we don't have enough and probably don't have enough funds for all the scanners that we're going to have to buy, but we'll figure it out and make it work.
Yeah, that's really exciting, Julie. And it's one of those things, thinking about, we have a very diverse viewership of these town halls. It's not only shelters that view these, it'll also include rescue groups and animal advocates. And so what a great way if we flip the script for the rescue groups and the animal advocates and maybe the ones that want to collaborate with their shelter to take what Julie's doing and present that to your own shelter and say, look, these are some shelters that are embracing this program. Maybe this is a way we can help with your return to home effort. So that's really exciting. Thanks, Julie. Michele, in the same vein, we're still under the concept of organizations working with the community to facilitate return to home. You have a very similar story of ways that you guys have been teaming up with animal welfare advocates in the El Paso area. Some of those wins working with those local lost and found Facebook groups. So can you talk a little bit about some of those cool features that you guys have started to work through?
Yeah, so and this was, pretty recent that we started doing this and looking to really expand on it. We kind of just happened into it. We're, very close partners with some of our local rescue groups, and one of our local rescue groups was hosting a online fundraiser with a local business. That local business was going to come here to the shelter to record their online fundraiser and adopt-a-thon because the rescue was here getting those puppies that they were adopting out, their vaccines and microchips, through our partnership with them. While they were here, we just happened to, strike up conversation, and they're like, let's have you hop on this Facebook Live that we're doing with this rescue organization. And the local business that was hosting it, one of the members of the business is actually one of the admins to that lost and found group that they were streaming this Facebook Live to. And I mean, they were just mind blown. They had no idea of all the programs that we have here and all the different ways that we can save lives, and, the process of trying to get pets home and all that. That they're actually going to probably be coming back next week or next month and doing that all over again, but more on our organization specifically. And so this kind of, we've been working with some of the local lost and found groups on Facebook because we have so many of them here in El Paso that it's that prime location that we could really reach people, because so much of our community is already utilizing those. And it's the perfect opportunity for people to learn the exact right way to file a found pet report or a lost pet report and try and get those pets home so much quicker, because, you know, with COVID, we've actually upgraded our website and our processes to make it easier for people to file those reports online, and just trying to get that word out to our community.
That's fantastic. And to keep you going on the topic of innovation, one of the areas that one of the practices that the challenge embraces is to better use technology. And I was so impressed with the mapping system that El Paso has pulled together. So can you talk about the mapping system that you have? And I'm going to pull it up on the screen a little bit too while you're talking to show our viewers what it looks like, because I was blown away. So take it away.
Yeah, we are, you know, we love our pet finder map. She's going to be pulling it up. We actually won the Diane and Bob Hoover Innovation Award last year in December for this pet finder map. And it's, you know, constantly a work in progress. It is a interactive tool for anyone that loses or finds a pet to zoom into their neighborhood directly and see what pets were lost and found in that area. And then we kind of took it a step further last year as well. And all those little orange pinpoints that you see are also our microchip scanning locations as well. So it's not just lost and found pets that you can view on this map. It's also a one-stop shop to kind of see what other microchip scanning locations are in the city. We were, I believe, the first shelter in the nation to implement fire station microchip scanning locations. And so that's what those little orange pins on the map are for. And like I said, this is a constant work in progress. We're always trying to enhance our pet finder map and get the word out about the pet finder map, because it's such a useful tool for our community. For those of you that don't know much about El Paso Animal Services, on a non-COVID year, we were having 27,000 animals coming into our care. And that's a lot of animals to have to scroll through on our website to try and narrow down if that pet came into the shelter or is in a finder to foster home. This pet finder map tool is so much easier for, you know, me as a pet parent. I lose my pet, I can zoom into my exact neighborhood within, you know, a few blocks and see if that pet was found in that direct area. And I mean, we've heard some amazing reunion stories about people, you know, finding their pets through our pet finder map, and that pet never having to step foot into the shelter, which is of course what we want. We had like most recently, one of those stories is we had a 15-year-old Chihuahua that was found, kept in a finder to foster home. The person filed a found pet report. The person that lost the pet looked on our pet finder map under the found pet reports and found his dog and reached out to the family, and they were reunited within like a day. I mean, that's like the ultimate goal, right?
That's the dream for sure. We actually had a question that came through on the chat that I think is a pretty easy one for you to answer while we're in the moment. What program was used for this? Like, could you give a little bit more on the technology specs, knowing it's a GIS type of mapping?
Yeah, so we actually kind of got the initial idea from some other shelters that have something similar, and then we just kind of like blew it up and like made it bigger for our usage. And so we partnered with our IT department for the city of El Paso. They use GIS mapping for, you know, environmental services and your district council person, stuff like that. So they already kind of had the software there. They just tweaked the coding for our usage. And it was, I think IT didn't realize the project that they were getting themselves into, but luckily we have some animal lovers in our IT department that they were gung-ho for it and willing to work on it. And, you know, we're constantly in contact with them on trying to make it better. And they always strive to enhance that program for us and try to for our community. And so, I mean, I'm not that techie. I'm a little bit techie, but I don't know like the coding behind it. But I know it's a GIS mapping, and it's used for mainly other things. It was not made for pet finder mapping, but you take something that already exists and make it for your usage.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. Yeah, GIS is something that is super common in like the government scale. So if you're a government agency and you think that your organization might have GIS,
reach out to your IT department. They want to help you.
Yes, everyone needs to advocate for talking to their IT department, right? So that's perfect. Thank you. So moving into more of a question for everybody, there's two practices in the Return to Home Challenge about having your regulations and your laws, really encouraging return to home, and also that animals are returned in the field rather than shelter, which sometimes those can also coincide as topics. So let's talk about field services and their role of returning in the field. And everyone's had some innovative ideas that you've brought to the table during our discussions. So let's start with Julie. Can you talk about some of the ways that your field team has innovated how they're maximizing on animals not having to come to the shelter and they can get home instead?
Sure. So our field services are our front line, right? And earlier I was talking about how we're so big and sometimes it's difficult and we need the community to come forward and deal with their community. But the officers are out there every day too. And it's that partnership between the community members and the officers that's key. I mean, the first step was to do a little changing of a mindset on what the role of field officers are about. We're used to being law enforcement and we're used to being a little more heavy-handed than we've been before. Now, on the same note, we also are very upset when people see us as heavy-handed. So it's something that we've had to kind of balance and figure out our own emotions from the field service side. So COVID put us in a great position to kind of start shifting our mentality on what field service was about. And we look at field services that we have three roles. Our role is to enforce, educate, and provide animal rescues. It's really, and the education piece is really the prevention piece and is the piece of what can we do and what kind of services can we provide to make a difference in the community. So we started to have a lot of dialogue with our animal control officers to see where they thought we needed to help and what they thought were services that the community needed in order to do a better job of lost and found as well as responsible pet care. And we branched a new program out of that called the Healthy Pet Zone. And the Healthy Pet Zone is basically a program where we provide resources and services to people in need. And branching out of the Healthy Pet Zone became our animal control boxes. And it's really a simple concept. We bought a bunch of boxes, and she's going to show a picture of the boxes, literally a Rubbermaid tub. And in the Rubbermaid tub is a bunch of stuff. And it's everything from leashes, collars, pet food, even tools so that they can do things like fixing fences. You're going to see some of the fixing fence materials there, bowls, flyers, anything that we can speak about. We did get grant funding for these boxes, and the boxes are now in every one of the trucks. And I have to tell you, when we first gave them to the field officers, all they could see is a new box that they had to put in their truck. They weren't 100% sure what to do with the boxes and why they had to carry the boxes until the word got out and people started flagging them down. So it used to be stay away from the animal control officer. Now they're flagging them down because they needed help and they needed support and they needed something out of that box. So it's actually been a really interesting transformation. And the stuff that's in the box has allowed us to help the community keep pets at home. And it has allowed the animal control officers to do everything that they want to do anyway, which is helping people and helping animals. And it's not only made a huge difference on the morale of the team, but it's made a huge difference in the community because now we're able to help them. It's really changing the perception and changing the approach. And on top of that, we can also then refer them to things like our pet food bank and our free or low cost spay neuter and free or low cost medical care. So whereas it used to be that we would go to a house and then we would give them a notice to comply, and then we'd come back and they wouldn't comply, and then we'd come back again and they wouldn't comply, and 3 years later we'd be back at the same house again because they wouldn't comply. Now it become, hey, if I give you a bag of food and get your animal spayed, could we help you? And it's suddenly we're not coming back to that house again. So it's been a really interesting and nice transformation. And now the staff is saying, what else can we put in the box? And they're telling us when the box is empty and they have to fill the box. So this box has really, in many ways, single-handedly transformed our team from being one way to another way. And it's been pretty awesome. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that those boxes are full. I was sharing with Kaylee earlier a story of our animal control officers who had the same situation, was going back to the lady's house a million times. And then they decided to bring 3 of the animal control officers out there and build the lady a doghouse with the tools in the box. And on top, and she's going to show that, on top of that, here's the doghouses, but they built them with the tools. They wrote up a story, they sent it to me, and they were extremely proud of themselves that they used the box and that they believe that they're not going to have to come back out to this home. And that animal's home. And in the past, the animal would have gotten loose, or they would have bred, or whatever the situation is. Now the animal's at home and we don't have to have another call and conflict. So it's been really a neat thing to watch the transformation. And now they're coming back with more ideas and exciting things on not only what we could put in the box, but what we can do in the field to help people, which is fantastic to see, and it warms my heart a little bit.
That's really fantastic, Julie. It's just so interesting how something small as the box, right? We keep calling it the box, is able to help reframe the mindset of not only the team, but the community, really bridging that gap. So it's really beautiful to see. And one of the most popular questions Julie gets when she talks about the box, because we talk about this in California forums a lot, is what's in the box and how much is everything? And so we have a whole resource link that will be shared that will have a budget breakdown, a list of what they use in theirs. Please always feel free to share back ideas of what you think should go in the box that would help in communities for ACOs. And there's also a really heartwarming video as well of that as well. It just would have been hard for us to play in this live format. So we hope you all have a chance to take a look at that, and it helps you if you want to embrace a box mentality. Along the same lines of field services, Michele, there was also some really great stuff that the team in El Paso was doing, specifically with our husky friend and a couple other little pieces. So if you wanted to go ahead and unmute and tell us some of the ways your field team is embracing returning in the field.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Julie, our animal protection team has really transitioned to becoming more involved in, life saving and get more pets home. We've been, doing RTH out in the field for, the last few years. And so that's kind of already been implemented within the department, but they're kind of going a little bit farther now. What our marketing and public engagement team really wanted to do within the last couple of months was really give our animal protection officers a platform to kind of tell their story. So we launched a new web series for Facebook and Instagram called our El Paso Animal Services Friday Field Updates. They're just short little videos that we put out on social media every Friday, where animal protection officers get the platform to talk about, tips that they're seeing out in the field that week, or really cool stories, reunion stories that, they interacted with that week, how many calls we received that week. And that's just been going on the last, 2 months or so. And it kind of really energized our animal protection team to really share those stories, because I know some of my marketing folks out there, sometimes it's hard to get photos and good stories from your team. And, the same thing was for us, but now I'm getting these stories all the time. One of them being, like Kaylee mentioned, a husky friend. So we were called about a pet that was found out in a neighborhood. He looked to be injured. Turns out there was actually an apartment fire the previous day in that neighborhood, and that husky was in that apartment when the apartment caught fire. Luckily, he was able to escape, and he was safe, but running around the neighborhood. So our animal protection officer was able to get the husky, and he was driving around the neighborhood. The husky had a microchip, but the microchip wasn't updated. So wasn't able to contact anyone directly right away, but he started scouring our lost and found Facebook pages. Those Facebook pages coming up again. And he was scouring the lost and found Facebook pages. Luckily, someone, a friend of the family, actually posted that their apartment caught on fire and they're missing their husky. And so he reached out to the friend on Facebook, private messaged him, and then was able to get in contact with the family. That husky didn't have to come to the shelter. Our animal protection officer was able to kind of do all that research while he was in his calls around the neighborhood, and the pup was safely in our truck that's climate controlled. So, the pup was okay, and then he was able to reunite with his family without having to come back to the shelter. So, getting those stories from our animal protection team, they're doing such amazing things out in the community. They're being more engagement rather than enforcement. They're they're given the opportunities to have a conversation with families. And we're really starting to see that they love doing that. They love having those conversations with our communities. They don't want, to take people's pets away or anything like that. They are wanting to have that conversation, want to build that relationship with our community, giving out resources, dog houses, pet food, stuff like that, directly out in the community, so much more than previous years. And I mean, our animal protection officers, when they're given the tools and the opportunities to do these amazing things, I mean, they're really thriving out there.
That's really great. The other little piece I remember you said is not only are they thriving in that regard, but then they're also embracing like little action items of when the animals are in your shelter and they just don't have a way to get home. And the name that you guys said was really cute. So can you tell us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, we call it Animal Services Prime. We stole Amazon Prime. And so, a pet that does end up in the shelter because it doesn't have a microchip or that microchip isn't updated. If our team manages to do the research and is able to find the family, if that family can't get to the shelter, we are like kind of in the middle of nowhere. El Paso's kind of spread out. It's not very easy to get to the shelter. People get lost all the time. So if someone's not able to get transportation to the shelter to reclaim their pet, we just Animal Services Prime that pet and take it right back to their home. So
that's a steal it idea right there. I love that.
Yes, please steal it.
Just don't tell Jeff Bezos or anybody up there. Hannah, one of the things that really struck me when you and I chatted first was when we talked a lot about some of the changes, and we're going to talk about change management in a second, but one of the things that you mentioned when we were first talking is that you challenged everyone on your team to brainstorm ideas. And so can you talk a little bit about some of those simplistic ideas that your ACOs came up with that you said, then run with it, let's figure out how to do it?
Sure, but I'm still getting over the whole Prime thing. That's pretty amazing. We are a small organization. We have a staff of 22. Our county has a population of about 86,000 people, but we're pretty spread out. We're very rural. So what works for us, I could dream all day long by myself, and I could sit and think about the biggest ideas out there. But really, the most important thing for us is asking the people who are doing it every single day, what will help you? And sometimes we find that the things in management that we don't even think of are things that they're like, we just need this. So really, in speaking to staff, and especially our animal control officers, what we found when we said, how can we help you return more animals home? How can you get engaged in this challenge? And I think Julie said something about having a dialogue with your animal control officers. They were super stoked about that. That was something that they'd been waiting for, really, because sure, you can hand them a microchip scanner and they're like, great, let's go. But they really need the opportunity to do a little bit more. So when we spoke to them and we talked about, these are the things that the Return to Home Challenge really involves. What could you use to help us do these things? And it was super simple. What they came back with is, in order to print a lost flyer, or in order to say, hey, I picked up an animal here, and in order to post something when they're out on the streets and doing that, we need printers in our trucks. And that honestly is just the simplest thing that, sure, if in an ideal world, they would already have that. But as a small organization, we were like, okay, well, let's look into the price of that. So one of our officers looked into all the prices of it. He's a former police officer. So he was like, we used to have them in the police trucks. These mount into the headrests and they literally sit there. And really, ultimately, for an organization like ours, they're not overly expensive. I mean, it's still a cost, but it's something that we can work in. So we have 4 officers total in our county. And so getting a printer for each one of them in their trucks, allowing them to pick up a lost animal, post wherever they found it, go to the local gas station where everybody may know each other and post that lost flyer with the actual picture will make a huge difference. And it's just funny, you know, it's something that you just don't think about in that moment. And they're like, well, printers would be great. And we're like, okay, let's do that.
That's perfect. I love that. And it's those small wins, right, that they're able to contribute their idea, see the success, and they want to own that. It's easier than having something appointed to you or told that you need to do. When you have that buy-in, it makes it so much easier. Which leads Hannah right into a very similar question, but one I think that you had some really poignant kind of thought process behind is, change management is really hard. And I think everyone on this call and everyone who's attending, who's watching this in real time or later, can attest to the fact that sometimes re-steering a ship, even if it's ever so minor in an organizational change, can be really difficult. And especially around the way things always have been done. So to be able to make that finesse, how did you approach getting staff buy-in at a universal level as it relates to this, and some of those tangible things that you were able to kind of check off your list after you got their buy-in?
So I'm sure with everyone here who has been running an organization for a while, you know that the most important asset that you have is the people that are doing what you do every day on all levels. So first of all, I have to give credit to one of my staff members, Valerie Carpenter. She has been sort of my point person on this. She was passionate about it from the start. Obviously, when we saw this challenge come up, we were all like, that's something that we could really use and make a targeted impact about for our organization, but she kind of ran with it. So in our conversations with staff and in my conversations with her, it was basically like, we'll think about what we could do, right? Think what you would love to do. What would you love to do? And then let's talk about it. So giving them the time to think about, you know, what could we really do if we wanted to? And then when they came to me with these ideas, being able to say, okay, that's a great idea. Like, y'all are awesome. But okay, now I have to find a way to encourage those ideas. Let's think about how we can actually fund that. So obviously every organization probably on here has been impacted by COVID in the same way that we have. It is a challenging time, but looking at what we didn't spend money on in our budget and looking at what we could retool that money for. We have fought very hard over the last 4 years for our organization to get money to actually do public like outreach events and events on the ground and actually being out there in the community. This year was a year where we really couldn't do that. So being able to look at that money and say, okay, so we couldn't go have an open house or we couldn't go have a pet resource fair. But we have, even for us, that may only be a $5,000 to $10,000 budget in a year. But what can we do with that money instead? And how can we use that? And looking at this challenge and the wonderful way that it was orchestrated to really target things, we basically went to our county management and said, look, we could make a big difference with this if we use it in a slightly different way than we originally got it for. And hey, COVID has really challenged us in these ways anyway. Being able to show that spending money in a different way would still save us resources, being able to do things that really switch things up and help get animals home would save us money in the long run, and really retooling that money that we had, even for us, if it's a small amount, in a different way, made a huge difference.
That's awesome. So to close out the rest of the pre-scripted questions and the panel questions, so please remember to submit your questions through the Q&A box. We'll be answering those live, as many as we can, for the last 10 to 15 minutes or so of our presentation. cost of services. This is like the Achilles heel of animal services, right? Is when we're rethinking the cost of service, it comes with a big challenge. And so a lot of times we want to do proactive stuff like doing free microchip clinics, or sometimes it's reactive work like providing a sliding scale for return to owners for maybe individuals who cannot afford the stock price that we have set on those. So we're going to have this panel. This is open to all the panelists to talk about some of the ways that you've been working with your communities, proactively keeping pets in homes, and any tips that you have, if you have any, on how to make the budget work for you in that way. I had Hannah noted as the first one, but I know she just talked a lot. So Julie or Michelle, if either of you want to go first.
I'm happy to go first if that's okay.
Of course.
So we are a large, clunky animal control organization that has functioned very traditional, right? Traditionally, we've managed our contracts and our funding based on animal intake and on activity in the community, which is completely contradictory to the work that we're doing. So how do you measure success? And we have that conversation all the time. Is success keeping animals in homes and having less calls? That's my success. But that success then means you're going to have less funding. So the first thing that we did is started having those open, honest conversations with our government officials to tell them we're not our success. What success looks like doesn't make sense. So we have to start changing that and start looking at a new funding model. We haven't come to the solution of the funding model, but I've at least gotten them to recognize our current funding model doesn't work. The second thing with that is that for these proactive programs, at least right now, we don't have extra money to pay for. So we got to find external funding to do it. So whether that is proactively writing grants or whether that is creating a mechanism for the community who wants to support us anyway to support. We did an internal county drive over the holiday, and I was blown away that out of like 32 county departments, 29 of them participated. So it's not that the people don't want to support these amazing things. You just have to have the mechanism for them to be able to do it. So you have to take the time to do that. And sometimes it's as simple as when you're showing a picture of a sad animal that you just helped, putting a little link on the bottom that says, and you can donate to help them, donate to our animal care fund. But as animal control entities, we often don't think that fundraising is our goal. And to me, it's beefed up. We even, so much to the fact that we took when somebody resigned, we took their secretary position and completely changed it and now made it a fundraising position. And I'm excited because she starts on Monday. But it's really thinking proactively about new and exciting ways to engage the community, to put yourself out there and say, you know what, we deserve the funding too, like everybody else deserves the funding. I'm going to apply. And sometimes all you have to do is ask and you get, and then of course, create all the mechanisms around there. With COVID, we had a stellar fundraising year. We upped our fundraising by 30%. Which is amazing, and we are a full-blown governmental entity. So I would absolutely say don't ever let anybody tell you you can't fundraise as a government. You can, and you should, and the public expects you to do it. And I would certainly say that that's a major part of it. So then if you look at your fundraising and you look at your internal operations and mesh them, it might not happen today, but I have a 5-year goal. Talk to me in 5 years. Our whole funding model and our funding process, crossing my fingers, is going to be completely different. And I would just say, just trust the process. It's going to get there if you have a process and a plan.
That's awesome. Michelle, if you can unmute yourself and talk a little bit about some of the proactive services that you all are providing in El Paso through CAPS, which I'm using the abbreviation if you can explain it.
Yeah, so CAPS is our Community and Pet Support Program. It is a very new program. It was implemented last July and kind of came out, COVID threw all of us through a whirlwind and had to make changes quick and operational changes and all of that. And Community and Pet Support kind of came out of that, offering more support and resources and information to our community who was already doing the work, getting pets home, finding pets, reuniting pets, helping, each other out. That we now have a dedicated program to help support that. And so our community and pet support program was started last year. We finally officially hired on the 2 supervisors that lead that program, and they oversee lost pets, found pets, our pet retention, pet resources program, and our everything that kind of falls under that. So anyone reaching out for assistance with pet food, or they need fencing help, or they're going into the hospital and they have no one to take care of their pets and they need assistance with boarding and stuff like that. So that community and pet support program oversee all of that, all of those programs. And I mean, COVID has affected so many people in our community and across the country that we're going to continue to see the effects of it for years to come. People lost their jobs, people are really struggling, and they're having to make these hard decisions of whether they're going to keep their pets or they're going to feed their family. And our Paso Animal Services has come a long way in the 5 years that I've been here. And now we're shifting gears, becoming more of a community resource hub, trying to become the organization that people can reach out to if they need help, and starting to implement these programs and have these resources to give to people. And of course, that's going to include funding. And, Julie brought up some really great points about, telling your story, and to be able to do that coming from a marketing background, telling your story is so important, not only for your community, to support you, but who's also in your community, your city leadership, your city manager, your council people. Tell that story to them too. We present to council on a regular basis, let them know what all is happening, all the programs we're implementing, because those are going to be the people that ultimately decide whether you get funding or not, are going to approve grants, that you get, stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, your community is going to support. We finally got a donate button last year. So we finally started fundraising as a government agency. Woohoo. But, as a city department, you really rely on that funding, on grants, stuff like that, to be able to do some of these life-saving programs that you're shifting from a sheltering model to a community model. And it's going to look different. Your successes are going to look different. Your key performance measures are going to look different. So being able to tell that story, putting that story out constantly through social media, through community events, through engagement, talking with your city leadership and implementing these partnerships with other organizations around your community, like food banks and stuff like that. All those partnerships, all that sharing your story is going to ultimately help you with continuing on implementing these life-saving programs.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic point. We're moving away in the animal sheltering services world of paying per head impounded. That is a traditional model that we've all fallen accustomed to, and it's really looking at that holistic picture of, no, our services are changing, and so is our dollar amounts, and so are the ways that we're helping our community. It's not about animals just coming in and coming out anymore. So it's really great, Julie and Michele, that you had those points to share.
And, with that shift, just so I can add, with that shift with, moving away from that heads in, heads out model, your staff is going to have to shift too. We moved people around. We have a new resource rover program that's 1 vet tech and 1 animal protection officer, because they're not needed in some of those traditional areas, and now they're going out in the community and offering more services out there. I mean, there's opportunities to move people around within your department, especially as you're shifting and less animals are coming in and you're keeping more pets at home.
Yeah. And at that point, yep, we're keeping pets at home, which is the whole point of today's panel, which is like the best part of it, right? Is we're keeping those animals there, and we're not trying to come up with a new solution when they already have one. So thank you. That's really exciting. And, Hannah, when I spoke to you, we were talking about thinking about proactive services and knowing that this challenge has really started to be able to snowball some efforts on your end. You have a really big event coming up, your baby's first microchip clinic, if you want to tell everyone about it and how you kind of came to it.
Yeah, so we're super excited. In Lincoln County, we don't currently offer microchips. We can't do it through in-house, but we have been able to work with a local veterinarian who is basically going to work with us to do our first microchip clinic, which is a huge deal for us. Talking about, rethinking the cost of services, part of the reason this came about is because we've been able to do so much both TNR and spay and neuter in the community over the last years. We actually had in-house an excess of microchips because we've had the same microchip order for so many years based on the intake that we got. And this year we're looking at our intake and saying, man, this is an automatic order of microchips and we've got some extras on hand. So really being able to look at that and say, okay, well, what could we do with those that is way better than just holding onto them or really scaling our order down is really microchipping pets out in the community. And we are so excited about it. It's on the 28th. And we're basically offering this first time in Lincoln County, we are doing 100 microchips for free. We hope to be able to do many more. We're really working with people, getting them signed up. Everyone is excited, staff are super excited. We're a little bit nervous too, because we have to figure out the logistics of actual day of and trying to factor in COVID, keeping everybody safe, and really doing it in a structured way, but we're super excited about it. And honestly, really, I can't agree with Julie and Michele enough in everything that they've said. It's basically this whole process and this whole challenge for us has been about retooling what we have. We are an organization that always looks at what our staff are doing and how we could take those positions and use them to do better. So a big part of that for us being a smaller agency is really working with our local county management to make sure that they know that while we have these positions and while this position might be great for what we have, in an ideal world, we would have so many less animal caretakers and so many more other program positions because we would be getting so many fewer animals in that really programs and helping the community would be better. So really taking a look at what your organization has been doing, what you can use those resources of what you have been doing to do more proactively has really been a huge thing for us.
That's really awesome. And congratulations. We're all going to be rooting for you and very soon in about 10 days. So it's exciting. Well, thank you all for your time. It's been really great hearing about all of the experiences that you've lived through and that you brought to the table. I do have a couple audience questions that I wanted to run through before we wrap up at the top of the hour. And the first one is for Julie, if I'm remembering the order of operations right. I believe it's about the Community Ambassador Program. And I just happened to miss this when we moved on to the next question. So the question is logistical. Are your ambassadors using their own phones? Or are they setting up Google Voice numbers? How is that means of communication working out with them in a holistic way?
So right now they're using their own equipment and they're using social media more than anything else in the world. But the idea of a Google phone would be great. And we do in our training talk about how to not get yourself in trouble. Sometimes people can be overzealous with their ambassador stuff. So we want to make sure that they're safe. So we do tell them meet at a place like the supermarket where there's a lot of people around. Don't give people your address. Don't meet them alone if you're going to meet them alone. So we talk a lot about safety as part of our training. But right now they are using their own stuff and very willingly. And I want to remind everybody that they're already doing it anyway. So they're going to be doing it whether I give them a phone or not. So the only thing that they've asked for above and beyond the scanners is some of the same stuff that we put in the boxes. They want food so that they can hand it to somebody. They want some of the same tools. So as long as we have the resources, we'll provide it to them too.
That's great. Thank you. Another question just came in for Michele. If anybody can add their pet to the map, or is it only through what's being filtered through your organization?
No. So our Pet Finder map is anything that is a lost or found pet report filed through our website or through 311. The animal does not have to come through the shelter. We actually recommend it doesn't. Our community and pet support team has, been amazing. I didn't mention this earlier, but, once they started, most of our RTO rates, normal shelter RTO rates, is anywhere from about 15 to 18%, give or take. Our community and pet support RTO rate or RTH rate is actually 30%. So any pet that is, goes through the proper processes, found report, kept in the neighborhood for a couple of days or a week or so, we, put it on our map. We encourage the finder to post it on social media, all this stuff. They have a higher chance of getting reunited. They have a 30% chance, so much higher than our shelter RTH rate. And so we actually do recommend, the community file that report, and it doesn't have to be here in the shelter. And that's how Poncho, the dog that I mentioned earlier, how he got home. 11-year-old dog, and, he was returned back to his family without even having to set foot in the shelter.
Yeah, you actually said something during that I remember from our conversations. I'd love for you to touch on really quickly, knowing I have one more question that I want to get to, and we have 4 minutes, is the Finder Foster program. We know those are super popular. That really took off right before COVID and during COVID. And at El Paso, you guys have kind of like a 201 of, if the finder cannot foster, the animal still doesn't have to come to the shelter. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, and I'll try to go through it really quickly, but yeah, so we have our regular finder to foster, talk to them, hey, can you hang on to the pet even for a few hours, few days? Awesome. If they cannot, or they can only hang on to it for a few hours, we ask them, please do let us research and see if there's another foster in your area that is willing to take on the pet. So then we'll call, our home-based fosters is what we call them. We call the ones that are kind of in that area, and then try and get that pet directly into another foster home. We also work with our rescue partners as well. If it's especially a pet that's super highly adoptable, and our rescue partners want to take that pet on, we'll reach out to them as well, see if any of their foster homes would be willing to take on the pet, so that it still goes through the process. And then if that pet isn't reunited with the family, it goes to the rescue organization as well.
That's amazing. I really think of that as like the 201, right? We put up that first safeguard of like, if you found the pet, maybe you can help find its home. And now it's like, and now we have fosters on deck in like a 4-mile radius of your home. And so it's just adding those layers of the shelter really being like the last option, and we filter through all the other ways that others can help support us. So that's a really cool idea, and I hope others steal it. I saw Julie nodding, and maybe Riverside will steal it, which is fantastic. Speaking of stealing, the last question, this is not how a town hall should end, but Serena asked that in researching best practice verbiage to update their website, she was wondering if it's okay to steal, meaning copy and paste from other websites that are doing a really great job in duplicating resources. I am the biggest advocate for do not recreate the wheel. And I see lots of thumbs up, right? So Serena, I hope, obviously ask the agencies, reach out to them, make some friends that way. But I think all of us have learned over time that your best resource is the one someone's already created. And so, we're all working on it together, shamelessly repurpose those things so you can focus those efforts on those animals and not on having to create material. So that, ladies, wraps up all of our audience questions. It puts us perfectly at the end of time. So I want to thank all three of you for your time and expertise. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and to be able to share the stories and successes that your agencies have been able to see through this challenge. And I hope it's inspired the rest of our attendees. So thank you everyone for your time. And this webinar is recorded and will be available on network.bestfriends.org for you to share with any of your friends and network later that might be interested in seeing this. So thanks for your time. Have a good night.